Well, in Wednesday's business report, what is Israel looking for in Africa? Well, Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino has all the details from New York. Hello, Jill.
Hi, Vincent. So there was a fantastic article in New African magazine that looks at the history of the Afro-Israeli relationship and its future that I would like to share as we typically focus on the U.S. and China. Previously, Israel's involvement with Africa has been characterized by a mix of a continued private sector presence along with a frenetic official policy that changes according to how African leaders have reacted to the various Arab-Israeli conflicts. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his recent bid to woo African leaders marks an entirely new chapter in the Afro-Israeli story. In fact, he's the first Israeli leader to visit West Africa since the 1960s and the first ever non-African leader to address an ECOWAS audience in June. And just this week, he welcomes Rwandan President Paul Kagame to Israel on an official visit.
Now, one may ask, why would Israel seem to be interested in Africa now, since looking back maybe a few years, it didn't see any strategic interest there?
Well, many of the same reasons like you see in China, for example. Speaking at the summit, Netanyahu said that he saw the resources, diversity, passion, and young entrepreneurs who are building companies. Africans are seizing the future, and Israel wants to seize this future with you. That's a quote. Offering partnerships in technology, agriculture, and security, he came to the summit with Israeli businessmen, and they met privately with 11 heads of state after his address.
And of course, as always, when it comes to Israel, there's always that question of the Middle East situation. Do you think this relationship can actually be forged, considering that there's some major, really ideological differences that leaders face?
Well, that's an excellent question, and why I think this relationship will be interesting to watch. One of the explicit purposes for Netanyahu's trip was to gather African support for Israel in the UN. African leaders have often opposed Israel in the UN over the Palestine issue, owing to the huge Muslim population in Africa, and also out of principle, as many identify with the plight of the Palestinians, as New African magazine points out. That said, Afro-Israeli relations have essentially taken a 20-year hiatus since the 90s, meaning that Africa has largely been off Israel's radar and vice versa until now and until Netanyahu. So a lot of conceptual differences may have mellowed out over that time period.
Whatever the case, looks like everyone is trying to court Africa. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Jill. And that's Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino joining us live from New York.